On Sunday, following a conversation with Turkish President Erdogan, President Trump announced that U.S. troops were going to be leaving northern Syria, essentially turning their backs on the Kurds. Turkey has been wanting to attack the Kurds for a very long time, and the U.S. definitely does know that. And the only thing that seemingly stopped that attack from taking place was the presence of U.S. troops. Well, that's no longer a thing. As I said, the U.S. troops have left the area. So, on Wednesday, as anybody could expect, Turkey's assault on the Kurds in northern Syria began. President Erdogan is calling the operation, quote, Peace Spring. President Erdogan said that the mission is to, quote, prevent the creation of a terror corridor across our southern border and to bring peace to the area, end quote. Erdogan is also now boasting that over 100 Kurds have been killed thus far. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces said Turkey was bombing civilian areas, and reports do indicate that multiple civilians have been killed.
When it comes to military actions, when it comes to, military operations, right? Those take plans. Right? That takes planning.
Yes,
Last time I checked, right?
It does.
You don't just unless you're on the ready, right? Unless you're on the ready for something that's like set to pop off, unless you're just ready to give orders and people are on standby. Yes, you can just say
this isn't a response.
Yeah, but even when that's the case, there's still plans.
Right.
So the day after the White House and Donald Trump issued this proclamation that we were pulling the remaining troops out of Syria, right? The next day, Turkey is on the ready. This ain't Thanksgiving, but Turkey is on the ready.
They
are ready to go, ready to strike. So
they bombed the Syrian-Iraqi border.
So what does that? So what does that tell you? They were having conversations the day before, but they were having conversations before then too. And Turkey goes and into their military operation the day after Donald Trump and the White House issues their proclamation to pull troops out.
Means that this was probably a long time.
It was probably a long time coming.
And not only was it a long time coming, that it was most likely known about from somebody like the President of the United States, Donald Trump. So President Trump did respond to these attacks from Turkey. And in a statement, he said, "This morning, Turkey, a NATO member, invaded Syria. The United States does not endorse this attack and has made it clear to Turkey that this operation is a bad idea." Now, as I stated before, you see this face right here, very confused. As I stated before, the White House and Donald Trump had announced that the U.S. troops were going to be leaving northern Syria and, in effect, leaving the Kurds alone. They also knew that this attack was coming. How do I know that? How does anybody know that? They said it themselves. They knew that the attack was coming. So for Trump to say that he does not endorse this attack and he thinks it's a bad idea, look, I don't know what was said on that phone call. I don't know. It would be something to get that transcript. But I don't know what was said on that phone call. And I don't know if President Trump explicitly said, yes, you have our permission. You can bomb the hell out of the Kurds. We're going to get the hell out of the way. We have no idea if he said that or not. What if he didn't say anything like that? But wouldn't taking the U.S. troops from that area be a statement enough? Wouldn't that be something like co-signing the actions of Turkey to go ahead and assault the Kurds?
Based on what is known about Turkish relationship with the Kurds. I think most people know that. I know Trump probably doesn't care, but I know there are members of his administration advisors that do. Right. So there's a long history there. So I don't know how you can't know that. I don't know how you can't take responsibility for what's happening. It does seem like Trump and his administration seem a bit self-conscious. Yeah. And trying to smooth this thing over because they know exactly they know exactly why they're getting criticized because they are responsible. If you have an aggressor, right? And that would be Turkey. Essentially, they're not I wouldn't call them a superpower, but they do have a state military.
Yes.
They do have a state military. So going up against like a rebel group like the Kurds,
Yeah.
that's like shooting fish in a barrel.
It is.
That's simple for them. But we know that our troops were in between them. We know that. That's a fact. So if you move those troops out of the way of that situation, knowing the relationship between those two groups, you move those troops out of the way and you just throw your hands up and say, hey, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. There's no resistance to what's going to take place now.
There's no resistance to a Turkish military.
And also, I want to be clear about something, too. To say that there's no resistance, maybe that's not the right choice of words here, too, because before this happened, before the U.S. troops were evacuated from the area, when they were pulled from the area, there was no fighting between the Turkish people and the Kurds, or the U.S. and the Kurds with or against Turkey. There was no threat to Turkey or anything like that. So I know a lot of people say that, yeah, we want to get our troops home. We want to get out all these endless world wars. We want to stop our troops from being exposed to all this violence and all this death. Yeah, I definitely agree. But what our contention was when we talked about this on Tuesday was that was definitely not the place to start, because, again, there was no conflict. There was no actual physical conflict between Turkey and the Kurds, who the U.S. were aligned with. So U.S. lives were not in danger from being killed by the Turkish forces.
It was essentially a demilitarized zone. So if people, especially Trump and specifically those on the left, progressives, want to pat themselves on the back for being anti-war, kind of as a response to troops being pulled from a demilitarized zone.
This is the wrong place.
I don't know. That seems like a bit of a spacious position to take, and then take that position, completely ignoring that you are kind of cheering in genocide.
Right.
You're cheering on a genocide. I mean, if you're willing to do that, cool. Still pat yourself on the back, but you got to do both. You got to pat yourself on the back and then be like, okay, I'm okay with that genocide.
Also, a genocide is bad enough, but it wasn't like we were disconnected from this in any way. We were connected to the Kurds. We had promised the Kurds that we were going to protect them, and then now we have turned our backs on them. So these are the same people that fought alongside us to end the threat of ISIS.
So wait. So if they fought alongside us to end the threat of ISIS, which is essentially created in a vacuum, right? What is this situation going to create? It's going to create another excuse.
Yes, it seems like it will. These are some more of Trump's words. His response to this attack, he said, Turkey has committed to protecting civilians, protecting religious minorities, including Christians, and ensuring no humanitarian crisis takes place, and we will hold them to this commitment. In addition, Turkey is now responsible for ensuring all ISIS fighters being held captive remain in prison, and that ISIS does not reconstitute in any way, shape, or form. We expect Turkey to abide by all of its commitments, and we continue to monitor the situation closely.
Did they sign anything? Is there a treaty?
Come on, man.
Is there a treaty, or did they sign anything? This seems like kind of empty promises, and it seems like Trump is always getting himself in a situation where there's empty promises. One situation that I could reference is North Korea, which is, those negotiations have completely fallen apart as of late.
Right.
Like completely. They don't even want to talk to the United States.
Right.
So I would like to see a treaty. This is what Will and I were talking about when we say things like a planned pullout, a strategic pullout. That requires like some sort of treaty, of some sort of like a model where a country is held accountable for not containing situations that we caused. Because we had a lot of comments in the chat, and we had a lot of I would say a few callers, talk about like, well, maybe we need to exit those areas. Maybe we need to exit that region. Actually, I do agree with that. But if you don't have an exit strategy, if there's no actual diplomatic pressure put on these countries, it's actually pointless. That's all Will and I are trying to explain. It's like, we're cool with pullouts, but if there's no actual diplomatic pressure put on countries like Turkey, then it's actually inconsequential. Pullout is actually, it's not inconsequential. It's inconsequential in the context of it, like actually solving a problem, being good.
But yeah, it's not inconsequential in that it's actually going to do something. There's going to be waves there's going to be a lot of carnage following. Essentially, what President Trump told the Turkish president I guess what he's acting like he told the Turkish president is, hey, go ahead with your onslaught, but don't go too far. Well, what's too far? Because you understand when you go forward with an attack, we're not throwing like water balloons in the sky. This isn't like freeze tag or something like that. This is not a game.
Like glitter bombs.
No. This is actual bullets and bombs that are striking people, civilians, and killing them. So what is going too far if too far isn't death? Which we know was on the way when we saw this action take place, when the White House announced that this was going to happen.
We pull the troops out, troops that actually weren't in danger. And like we said on the last show, I think in 2 years, 4 American troops that died. 4 American troops that died. So you pull troops out of a demilitarized zone, that's a good thing.
Right.
But then you're actually creating a situation that is causing a genocide to take place.
Right.
Is that good?
The deaths that were caused, the deaths that were lost. I mean,
the lives that were
lost.
Yeah.
In those 2 years, were they because of Turkey? They were not because of Turkey.
They were not because of Turkey.
Right. So again, I understand, just like what you're saying, I understand people want our troops out of these areas. We want to stop waging war. We want to stop,
wasn't a regime
lending
change
ourselves to regime change and just making things more difficult, more catastrophic in certain areas. I totally agree. But why now? Again, when Turkey's not even threatening the Kurds or the United States, why pull them out? So with Trump, does Trump have any connections to Turkey? He has connections to Turkey.
Oh, he has multiple connections to
Exactly.
Turkey, not just business interests, but his campaign advisor. I guess he was a national security advisor, Michael Flynn.
Yep.
There's a definite connection to Turkey there. I'm not even going to go into what he was involved in Turkey, but he failed to disclose he was doing some lobbying work, and he failed to disclose that he was involved in some sort of like kidnapping scheme and getting paid for it. So there's not just a financial connection to Turkey because he has properties in Istanbul or something like that. That shouldn't be talked about, right? That shouldn't be talked about, right? That's not a factor in anything.
I have a quote from Donald Trump back in 2015. This was in an interview with Breitbart. He said, "I have a little conflict of interest because I have a major building in Istanbul. It's a tremendously successful job. It's called Trump Towers. 2 towers instead of 1. Not the usual 1. It's 2.
So he has a direct link financially. Just 1. And he also has a direct link with somebody who was on his campaign who is now serving a very short sentence considering what he did. Now he ended up pleading guilty and he was complying with some of the provisions within his plea deal in the Mueller investigation. But yeah, it just seems as if Trump doesn't just have financial interests, he has like political interests as well to cover for Turkey,
Right.
essentially because that's the country that was kind of, I would say, front and center in regard to one of his campaign people, Michael Flynn.
So for anybody that is celebrating this move and thinking that Trump made this move because he is some righteous leader and somebody that actually wants to remove ourselves from harm's way or remove the United States military forces from waging war and making things worse in areas. He's actually doing the right thing for the right reasons. No. It doesn't even look like it's the right decision, and it definitely doesn't look like it's the right reasons.